Episode 85 of the Pilot podcast takes off now.
Hi, my name is Anders Young. I am a regional pilot for SkyWest Airlines.
What is going on, Aviation Nation, and welcome back to the Pilot podcast. My name is Justin Seams, and I'm your host. Today, I'm talking with Anders Young. Anders is a current regional pilot who also flew and billed time out in Alaska, flying for Raven Air. This is a great conversation I had. We actually followed each other from the get-go, from the beginning. Back when I was starting out on Instagram, I found Anders' page, and we've been in contact. I asked him to come on the podcast. He said wait until he flies for regional so he can tell more of a story. And we did. So it's been about 2 years since we followed each other, and he is at a regional right now, and he is just loving life. He's traveling all over the place, as you'll see once you follow him and hear his story. I really enjoyed talking with Anders. He has a great story. Started as a ramp agent out in Phoenix, and then he built his time, got his ratings in California, and went to Arizona State. And he also got a job flying for Raven, flying some freight and some passengers in a Caravan in the 207 in Alaska. It's crazy, the stories that he's going to tell and that you'll hear. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. If you do, please leave us a review on iTunes. You can check out our website, www.pilotthepilothq.com. You can find links to our Patreon, our Instagram, and Twitter, and pretty much anywhere else. Also, please leave a review. You can leave a review on iTunes. We have 392 right now, looking to get to 400 by the end of the year. I think we can do it. One more month to go, but we can do it. Aviation Nation, I don't want to keep you any longer. So without any further ado, here's Anders Young. Anders, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Pilot podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be on the show.
Yeah, it's I've actually been following you for a long time. Ever since, didn't you work in Phoenix for ground or something?
Yes, I was a ramp agent for Piedmont Airlines at Phoenix Sky Harbor.
I remember you took a really sweet sunset photo, and I liked it. And I think I reached out to you pretty much immediately.
Okay, that's funny that you remember that. Yeah, I remember. I've been following you for a while. Originally, when you were flying the Pilatus, I believe.
Yep. Feels like a long time ago now.
Yeah, it does feel like a long time ago now. Yeah, with the sweet the American flag paint job on the side.
Yep, it was interesting times for sure.
Yes,
but you worked ramp, and then you had all your ratings when you worked at the ramp, right?
I was working on them. Yeah, so at the time, let's see, that was probably when I was a senior in college, and at that point, I would have been working on my commercial single. So I had my private, my instrument, and working on my commercial single. And then let's see, after I graduated from college, I worked on the ramp for another couple months and got really lucky, super lucky, got hired up with Raven, Alaska at that point. And then that's kind of where the 135 thing all kicked off.
Well, let's take it farther back. Why aviation to start out with? Like, do you come from an aviation family? Did you always want to be in aviation? How did that all start?
Yeah, there's not a single person in my family that works in aviation. So I'm the first person in aviation in my family. Not really exactly sure what led me to like my complete fascination with airplanes, but I can remember kind of some of the first memories. I remember in second grade, I was staying at a friend's house for the night, and he had a copy of Flight Sim 2000 or 2002 or something like that. And the year before, I had taken a trip with my dad to Hong Kong, and we flew. My trip to Hong Kong, we flew from San Francisco to Hong Kong on a Singapore Airlines 747. And one of the first missions in Flight Sim 2002, I think, was to fly a 747 from San Francisco to Hong Kong. And I was hooked.
Nerding out?
Yeah, I was nerding out. I press button full throttle, blast off, And I remember on like the big screen in the middle, there was like the pink line, which is funny now because everyone talks about like follow the magenta line.
Children of the magenta line.
Yeah, children of the magenta lines. Yeah, so I'm a child of the magenta line, I guess.
Same.
So
I wouldn't want it any other way.
Exactly. So I got hooked on Flight Sim. Played a lot of Flight Sim as a kid, middle school and stuff like that. And then took flight lessons at the local airport by my house in high school. Yep. So started senior year of high school. Got my private pilot's license when I was 17, and then. So that's where it all started. And I think I knew pretty early on, even before that, middle school, that I wanted to be an airline pilot. That's always been my goal. Didn't really know that there were other jobs outside of the airlines and aviation, but yeah, it's always been the end goal.
That's awesome. What did your parents say? Because obviously there's like no background in aviation. There's no like there's no guideline on how to do it. Where they're just like, oh, sure, you want to be a pilot,
absolutely.
Like whatever.
So, and that was middle school. That was when I 2008, 2009. So right during the recession.
Mm-hmm.
So
not the best time.
Not the greatest time to be looking into a career in aviation.
Right.
Absolutely. So my parents were pretty weary about it. I will give them a lot of credit though that they didn't say no, like just out of the gate. They were like, I think they saw that I really had a passion for it. So they allowed me to pursue that avenue. But they definitely took steps to make sure that I wasn't going to, set myself up for failure or, get in a really bad position with the career. So their big thing was going to school and getting a degree that wasn't in aviation.
Okay.
So
backup plan,
exactly. So the end result of that is I got a aerospace engineering degree. Not a great time to be in aviation, 2008, 2009. So that was, my parents did a lot of help kind of like looking into the industry, like how do you even get into being a pilot for a career? Cause it's nothing that they knew. My dad came from Hong Kong to the US. He's not, from the US originally. My mom was in the Army. They're both physicians, but no idea what to do for aviation.
Go to Google, just Google it.
Google.com.
How does my son become a pilot?
Exactly. But they did a really good job. And, I obviously took it upon myself as well to find out how to do this. And I would constantly bug them in middle school and high school. I want to take flight lessons. It's like, that doesn't really, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but like flying when you're like 14 isn't going to help a whole lot towards getting your private. I don't know if I.
It depends on how you. It depends on how you do it. Like, I guess you could like prepare.
Yeah, I guess like people do gliders and stuff like that, and you can prepare and you can get very familiar. So I guess like family, friends, and stuff like that knew I had a passion for aviation. So I remember my uncle had a coworker who had his private, I think, and maybe owned a plane. And so for Christmas one year, like he gave me a bunch of like an old version of the pilot's handbook for aeronautical knowledge, the PHAC, and like a Jeppesen private pilot guide manual book thing. It might even be on my bookshelf. Maybe not. But stuff like that. And I would tear through those as a kid. And then, I'd play flight sim like whenever I possibly could.
What's funny about aviation is how so you're talking about how you knew you want to be a pilot at a young age, and this is what you always wanted to do, where people like me or even people later in life, they don't know that they want to be a pilot, and all of a sudden the bug hits them, but it doesn't matter when it hits, like you can still be a pilot no matter what you do,
absolutely.
Which is crazy. It's like, it's never too late.
Yeah, I see posts on Facebook and Instagram all the time, people who are in their in their 30s and their 40s, even 50s. And it's like, is it too late to become a pilot? And no, I don't think so at all. It takes from zero to hero, it can take 2-3 years, worst case scenario. If you really put your mind to it and do everything as quick as you can get it done pretty quickly. And then I don't know I feel like there's a lot of people that are doing it as a second career who already have, made a good living at, doing, working in IT, tech, engineering, something like that. Even if you're 50 years old and you get your ATP when you're 50, you can be at the regionals for 15 years.
It's a good career.
It's a good career. And I've heard of Southwest even picking up guys that are in their 50s. You can still have a lot of fun and make a good amount of money.
Well, it's funny. I was driving here. We both live in Chicago. I live a little farther west, and I was driving through traffic, and I was just sitting here. I was like, oh my gosh, these people have to do this every single day at like 7:30, wait in traffic. I was like, I would die. There's no way. And I was just so thankful for aviation and the job that I have, because we don't have to deal with the normal mundane 9-to-5 type life. So it's, if you are tired of that and you think about aviation, go for it.
Absolutely.
It's like 50, 45, 55. Try it. You might like it.
And I love seeing that too. I feel like people who are career changers later in life tend to be better students. I saw this a lot in college. The adult students, when I say adult students, I mean like people who were not 18 to 22, people in my engineering classes that were, in their 30s and 40s and getting a second degree or something like that. And they were always super attentive. I mean, I cannot admit to being a good student.
Me either. Not at all.
You know, I was sitting there with my friends, like, it'd be a good day if I was paying attention like 50% of the time.
Yeah, but it worked out. You're here, right?
It works, right?
You got your degree.
But you know, like it seems to be like the older students like made good relationships with their professors and like were good students.
Absolutely. I wonder if it's because maybe they thought more was on the line, like they understood like everything was counting on what they're doing. Where you're 18, you're just kind of like do.
Oh, I think if I could go back to school right now, I would do so much better.
I would have tried to get my ratings a lot quicker because it took me forever to get my private pilot license with football because I just kept making excuses over and over. It's like, I'm too tired. That leg workout was too hard. I don't have enough leg power to do more right rudder.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to sleep in. It's just like, no, just get it done. I could be even further down my career right now.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's talk about your flight training. You got your private in high school in California.
Yeah. So
how did you pick a school? What was that? Because obviously, like you said, you didn't know anything about flight schools or anything.
Yeah,
how did you go about that?
It was really just the closest school to where I lived. It was at Cal Aggie Flying Farmers at the University Airport in Davis, California. A couple miles down the street from my house. Yeah, it's great. It was convenient. As a kid, I would like ride my bike there after school and like watch planes. So
you're like a full av geek.
Oh, dude, full av geek, man.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then actually upon further research, I think comparing that school to schools in the area, it was not only convenient because it was close by, but it was actually pretty affordable, relatively speaking, in aviation. It was a flight club, so that, there was a small monthly dues, but it was like a not-for-profit. So the rental rates were pretty reasonable, and they're actually still pretty reasonable when you look at flight schools around there. So I think that helps. I'm not really sure why. I think just as a kid, I was like, I just want to take flight lessons at University Airport. Like that's just where it was. It was right down the street from me. And
why would I go anywhere else? Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if we really looked at any other flight schools. I think we looked at a couple at Sacramento Executive. But, then if you're going to take a flight lesson like after school, right? You get out of school at 3:30, then you're going to go drive in rush hour traffic 15 miles away to go take a 45-minute flight lesson or something like that. And then, then it's my parents that have to deal with that. And I think when I started taking flight lessons, I think I had my learner's permit for my driver's license, but I couldn't drive by myself, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So also, it's good to have the closest airport if it's the cheapest option or the best option, because if you're going to have to worry about traffic, that's more excuses that you put in your mind to get out of that flight training. And I feel like you need everything going with you because flight training does get hard.
Like
that gets to the point. Yeah, exactly. It is like going to the gym. It's like you don't want to do it all the time, but it's something you have to do to get your ratings. And the fewer amount of excuses you can put out there, the better you'll be. So make everything going in your favor rather than having to be like, so yeah, it's important to find cheap and close and safe.
Yeah.
You got to find the safe ratio between all three of those.
Yes.
And someone to drive you when you only have your permit.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah. What was your training like? Did you struggle with anything at all, or was it pretty easy?
It was, from what I remember, it was pretty good. I have to say, flight training is not always fun. It can definitely be a drag. You have to get yourself there and get yourself through it. Even as a full blown av geek, and I was obsessed with flying as a high schooler or teenager. If it's your third or fourth lesson in a row and you're just going to go do ground reference maneuvers and stalls, it's the worst. You do not want to do that. You're just like, let me do a cross country. Let me go solo. Let me, do something cool, not fly over freaking farm field for the time, and
this sucks.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember I had a lot of fun. My first solo cross country, we went to Half Moon Bay. Mm-hmm. So we did like a bay tour.
Big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah. Flew over, Alcatraz, Golden Gate Bridge, downtown San Francisco, looped around the city under the Bravo airspace, landed at Half Moon Bay, grabbed some food. I do remember, I was 16 or 17 at the time, so I didn't have a debit card or a credit card. And I was in high school, so I rarely carried cash on me. So we get to the restaurant at the airport, and I'm like, oh, wait, how do I pay for this? So I had to awkwardly ask my instructor to grab my food and
You're like, all right, start the airplane, I'm going to take the food. We need to go.
Yeah, exactly. A little 5-finger discount.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really good. I think Northern California is a really exciting place to fly. You know, you're close to the mountain. You're close to Sierra Nevadas, Tahoe, Yosemite. You have the beach, Half Moon Bay. You can go down to San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Monterey, stuff like that.
I did my private pilot training in Ohio. Not nearly as exciting.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. There's a lot of really exciting destinations in California.
There was cornfields, and then a bigger cornfield, and then a smaller cornfield.
Right, exactly. Some are plowed north-south, some are plowed east-west.
Exactly. Some have soybeans, some have corn. It's just, but the one thing, when I did my training in Ohio, it was crazy because there's so many fields. And then when I went back to North Carolina, all it was trees and hills. And I was like, where do I land if I have an engine failure?
Absolutely.
It's like, I kind of appreciated the Ohio training area because you could land anywhere. There was fields everywhere. It was like, you felt more comfortable, I guess, which I don't know if that's the right word or not, but like an engine out wouldn't have been as big of a deal up there. Well, it's still a big deal, but you know what I mean? So you're doing your training, Half Moon Bay. That sounds fun. That sounds awesome. What was next after your private? Obviously you got your private there and then you went to college.
Yep. So I got my private senior year of high school and then I went to Arizona State for college.
Why'd you choose Arizona State?
A big part of it was I got a decent sized scholarship, which made it very affordable. So I really wanted to live in a city. Now, Phoenix and Tempe doesn't really have like that city atmosphere. So actually, I really wanted to go to Boston University. That was...
Do they have an aviation department?
No, nothing. No aviation program. They have like a small engineering school with an aerospace like track.
With like one dark room as one aerospace guy.
Yeah, a lab with 2 computers and like a 2... like
they do flight simulator all day.
Like a 5-inch like wind tunnel or something like that, you know? No, I really want to go to Boston University. Okay. And the problem with that is that it's a very expensive school. And they don't...
halfway around the world almost.
All the way across the country. They don't really hand out scholarships that easy. Like I said, I wasn't a great student. But Arizona State offered me a pretty good scholarship that made the possibility of going to school and doing flight training a reality. And basically, it was going to be Boston University, and that could have been a possibility, but there was no possibility of doing that and flight training. I mean, that's a lot of money. So I went to Arizona State and started in the aerospace engineering program. And I actually didn't fly for like 2 years. So I had my private, and I got checked out at a local flight school. And I would, every couple months, 3 or 4 months, go up with, go get current, go fly around, take some friends up or something like that. But I wasn't really making any progress towards flight training. And to me, that was a big morale drag, that I've never really wanted to be an engineer.
Just doing it to make the parents happy.
Yeah, a little bit. And I mean, it's a good idea, but I didn't have a whole lot of motivation for engineering school, and I had a lot more motivation for flying. So not taking flight lessons, not making any, progress towards that end goal was a little rough. But then...
Why would you say why did you take 2 years off? Was it just because of school? You had a lot going on?
Yeah, it was school. I mean, the first couple of years of engineering school are all 4 years are brutal, honestly. So
it was more of a time thing.
It's a lot of time thing. I wasn't a great student anyways. I had to put a lot of effort into just passing the classes that I was taking.
Which is important.
Which is important. Absolutely. So throwing a certificate on there, another rating, is not all that helpful towards that. Mostly just focusing on school. And then junior of college, I started with my instrument rating and spaced it out quite a bit. I wasn't like going super, I wasn't forcing myself through it super hard. Probably taking 1 lesson a week, maybe. Nothing like, the flight program kids who are flying all the time.
You didn't do the aviation flight trail. So you didn't do it part
No.
141. You did it 61 through
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I went to a flight school down in Chandler, Arizona.
Okay. How far away was that? Was that pretty far?
It was like a 15-minute drive from campus.
There's so many airports out in Arizona.
Yes. Yeah.
Crazy.
Phoenix has a ton. I think there's like 8 or 9 Class Delta airports plus Sky Harbor. Yeah. Ton of flight training. It's absolutely insane. I am kind of glad that I did get to do some flight training in Arizona just to experience it because
crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
When we fly down there, it's just like, oh my gosh, we're going to die. There's so many people out here.
Yeah.
Controllers are going crazy. It's just like, you're like feet away from hitting other planes all the time.
And there have been mid-airs down there.
Yeah.
And that was down in Chandler, did my instrument rating. So I got to experience the Stanfield stack. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not, no.
For instrument students, you want to do a bunch of practice ILSs, VOR approaches, NDB. Well, I guess they didn't have an NDB. But most of the airports in Phoenix are Class Delta airports, right? So they have some separation requirements in terms of putting 2 planes on, stacking them up on the approach. However, at Casa Grande Airport, about 40, 50 miles south of Phoenix, it's an uncontrolled airport with a full ILS, a VOR, and everything. So it has ILS approaches, VOR approaches, GPS approaches, and it's uncontrolled. So you can just fly like 2 miles in trail of each other.
So it's like the wild, wild west out there.
Yeah, and so there's a VOR to the southwest called Stanfield VOR, and basically all the approaches have a hold there. And all the flight students, everyone goes to Stanfield, and you stack up in the hold every 500 feet going up. And so, you leave the Class Delta, you go down there, you call up on the Stanfield Unicom, Stanfield traffic, whatever. We're 10 miles to the north, requesting top of stack. And whoever's on the top says 6,500. Roger, 10 minutes out, climbing to 7,000.
So there's just from 7,000 down.
Yeah, all the way down to, I think,
feet people holding.
the bottom of the stack's 3,500. It's been a while, so I don't quite remember. But yeah, and then, the person at the bottom of the stack goes VOR inbound on the approach. And they say, all right, we're VOR inbound on the ILS, runway 5. And the person at 4,000 goes, Roger, 4,000 leaving 4,000 for 3,500 in the stack. And then everyone steps down 500 feet.
A lot of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me as an instrument student, I'm under the hood. You're just kind of like trusting your instructor.
He's probably just listening to music, just like
exactly
rocking out. Like, I can't wait till I'm done with this crap. I want to get out of here, not paying attention.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then you get people who are unfamiliar. The VOR is also on a couple Victor Airways, so you get people just like transiting the airspace. Someone like blow through the hold. Some bananas or something like that. Yeah, and that's their right.
Yeah, they don't know any better.
Yeah, they don't know.
They don't have an approach chart up there.
Yeah,
they
not their fault.
Yeah.
They might be with a. Hopefully they're not with approach. Hopefully approach would tell them.
Yeah, don't do that. Bad idea.
But yeah, I remember, and you would get some military traffic. Pretty much anyone who's looking to do a bunch of approaches at once a lot of people would go to Casa Grande. So yeah, and the missed approach procedure was like, I believe at the missed approach point, you make a right-hand turn back to the VOR. Now, when you're in a 172 or a Piper Warrior or something like that, and your ground speed is 80 knots, your turn radius is not that big, right? So you're flipping essentially a 180 to go back to the VOR, and you're basically flying straight into the final approach course. So I remember, you'd hear someone go missed, and they say, all right, we're flying back to the VOR. And in my head, I'm thinking, kind of making a 3D picture in my head of where all the traffic is. I'm under the hood. I can't actually see them, but I'm trying to figure out in my head where all of them are. I'm like, all right, that person's coming right back towards us. And I remember my instructor one day saying like, oh yeah, I got him in sight. Yeah, we're well clear. And I like took a peek up from under the hood, and they're like, 400 feet above us going like opposite direction. I'm like,
well clear, huh?
Okay. Yeah. Sweet.
Your definition of well clear and mine are a little different.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, that was a Stanfield stack.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they sell them, but I think I've seen a shirt with a design that says, I survived the Stanfield stack. And anybody who's instructing in Phoenix will relate to that.
That's crazy. Yeah. I didn't have to deal with the Stanfield stack, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
That sounds awful.
A very unique experience.
Yeah, I guess. Made you a better pilot, huh?
Yeah.
So you did your instrument there. You kind of took your time, like you said. And did you also do your commercial and get all the rest of your ratings there?
Yep. So different flight school. A buddy of mine was had just gotten a CFI and was instructing at a different flight school. So I went to them and had him as my instructor for the commercial single. Did 11 hours in the Piper Arrow, whatever, and knocked that out pretty quick. So, that was pretty good. So, and that was senior year of college. So around time of graduation and stuff like that from college, I had my engineering degree and my commercial single.
Nice. What did you do for your multi? Because obviously you went to Raven to go fly singles. No, you flew 207s, right?
Yeah, Caravans and 207s.
Okay, so you know multi time up there.
No multi.
So you didn't have your multi when you went up there?
No.
Okay, so let's talk first about you were working ramp and then you went to Raven. So why did you start working ramp? What was the...
I wanted flight benefits.
Okay.
No, that's...
You just wanted to travel?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. At this point, I had a lot of friends that were either a couple years older than me and starting to get into the regionals, and they were starting to take trips on their flight benefits and stuff like that. And I was like, I want that.
Yeah.
Now I want it.
You travel more than anyone I know on Instagram.
Well, I try.
It's like,
I guess I really like aviation and stuff like that, but it's a means to travel, obviously. I love my flight benefits. I don't know what I'd do without them. But yeah, so I really wanted my flight benefits, or I wanted flight benefits. And at the time it was still US Airways in Phoenix. It was a US Airways base. And that's where the headquarters was, in Tempe, right off campus, actually, from ASU. My roommate was an accounting major, and he actually got a accounting job, or like a temporary accounting job with US Airways over the summer. And so he got flight benefits. So he wasn't in aviation at all, and he had flight benefits and I didn't. And I was so jealous. I can't even begin to describe. I was like, he would go back and visit like family every 3 weeks. And I was like, you could go every weekend if you want. It's free.
You're like, what are you doing? You're wasting this.
Exactly. I was like, you're wasting it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I applied to, Southwest, US Airways, and Piedmont. Piedmont offered me the ramp agent position, and I took that. So yeah, we basically did the regional operations at Sky Harbor for American.
Okay.
So it was the SkyWest and the Mesa CRJs, essentially.
Did you have American benefits only, or do you have other benefits?
We had, so since Piedmont's owned by American, we had American benefits, which was sweet. So mainline American benefits, which, American is based off time of check-in, not seniority. So
my dad complains about that all the time.
Yes, it's, there's different opinions on it, obviously. And it really benefits people who are new and junior, and it kind of, people who are very senior and maybe have been at the company for a long time don't look as favorably.
My dad doesn't even know how to check in. He's like, what the heck? My mom has to check in for him. He's coming today. And my mom was like, remember to check in your dad when he leaves. I'm like, how does he not know how to do this shit? It's like, he's 60 years. Like, come on, dad.
Yeah. So, it was great for me, I will say. As a ramper who had been working for the company for, 2-3 months, right out of the gate. You get flight benefits right out of the gate, and it's all time check-in. So, 24 hours prior, you hit check-in, and whoever hits it first is at the top of the standby list. So even as someone who had only been working there for 2 or 3 months, I was able to take insane trips that I probably should not have been allowed to take.
Are pilots ranked higher than ramp agents, or is it all the same?
No. So any American employee, the standard pass travel priority is a D2. So everyone's a D2. And then I think everyone gets 6 vacation passes a year, which is D1. So if you want to burn a vacation pass, you can be on like a higher tier. But you're still standby. But you're still standby, right. And you only get 6 of those one ways per year. So you don't want to burn them for everyday travel.
Right. Kind of like an emergency, like you need to get home type deal.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Or you are legitimately going on vacation and you want that best shot at getting a first class seat, something like that. So yeah, all the rampers, pilots, flight attendants, HR office, management, everyone is just a standard D2. And so as long as you hit that check-in button 24 hours prior, you can be at the top of the D2s. So with those benefits, I was able to, where did I go? All over. Buenos Aires, Santiago, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Seoul, all over Europe. And yeah, at the time, I think that was my last semester in college. I was only taking one class. So basically I had class Tuesday and Thursday, and I would try and work on the ramp like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or something like that, try and get my schedule to line up so that I would have like Friday through Monday off. So I'd have like 4 days to travel. So unfortunately, Phoenix doesn't have a whole lot of like international options, but I would like, after class, I would hop on a flight from Phoenix to Dallas and then take a red eye from Dallas to
go anywhere in the world.
Yeah, anywhere from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty great.
That's incredible. That's definitely a good reason to go work for an airline for those travel benefits.
Yes.
Yeah. From what I hear, they're not as good as what they used to be, but you can still do it. You are walking proof that's possible because you're literally in a different place every single time I check your Instagram. It's like, I think I messaged you the other day and I was like, what are you like? Aren't you tired of being gone? Like, how can you do this?
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
I mean, yeah, it does. But my view towards it is I'm pretty young. I have the ability to travel. And, now with the jobs I have, kind of like a means to travel. I can afford to, get an Airbnb or a hotel for the night if I need to. And it's like, I know I'm not always going to have this much free time. So
do what I can.
Exactly. Do all I can, take advantage of it. I would probably really resent myself if I didn't. So, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes I maybe take trips purely because I'm like, oh, I can take this trip. Like, oh, there's a first class seat going to, this place. I should go, when really what my body needs is like a couple days on the couch at home.
Like just full 24 hours of sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So it has its pluses and minuses.
That's awesome. I mean, it's a benefit. So go ahead and do it. Like you said, you're young, so go take advantage of it. What about, all right, so Raven, why Raven? How did that all happen? How long were you working ramp before you started applying for those kind of jobs?
Yeah. All right. I'm trying to figure out the timeline here. So yeah, after graduation, working on the ramp with my commercial single, the end goal was to go to the regional airlines. And the means to get to that end was to instruct. So I was working on the ramp and also working on my CFI. So I was starting like the very beginning stages of getting my CFI. I think a lot of people share the sentiment that instructing is a means to an end. It's not. I mean, there are career instructors out there, but it's not for everyone. And it certainly wasn't my dream to be a flight instructor. So while I was doing that, I was also, exploring the low time pilot opportunities, pipeline patrol, skydive, banner towing, skydive ops. What else is there?
Aerial survey.
Yeah,
there's there's a ton of things.
Yeah, lots of different opportunities. Yeah. So, I'd, browse the Facebook pages, aviation career mentorship and corporate aviation job listings, just see what's out there. And I remember one guy commented like, oh yeah, my company is hiring SICs with wet commercial certificate, 250 hours, no multi required, and they're paying $205 a day. And I was like, all right, what's the catch? Like that's not bad for someone who has essentially zero aviation job experience. So I messaged him and I asked him a bunch of questions about the job. And yeah, so it turned out it was with Raven, Alaska, formerly Era Aviation, which was the company that was on Flying Wild Alaska, the TV show. So he gave me the rundown, essentially entry-level position was the right seat of the Caravan, $205 a day, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And you had CAS. You were in CAS, so you could jump seat. No, you didn't really have flight benefits, but you could jump seat. So I was like, all right, that's not bad because I can still travel. I can fly and get paid to fly. I'm not instructing. Downside, commuting to Alaska. And it's a big change from Arizona.
Absolutely.
And I grew up in California, so not really an Alaska kid by any means. So basically, after a while, he was like, "Well, if you're interested, I can pass your resume on to the chief pilot." And I was like, "All right, sure, why not?" And so sent him my resume, and a couple of days later, got a call from someone in HR asking if I wanted to set up a phone interview. I was like, "Wow, okay, yeah, sure." Did a phone interview and talked to the assistant chief and the chief pilot at the time. Pretty basic pretty basic interview. I mean, it's an entry level 135 job. You're expected to have like pretty solid IFR knowledge and stuff like that. Not expected to know how to dissect a turbine engine or anything by any means, but yeah. So I'm not really sure why or how. And again, I consider myself very lucky for getting this job because I know how in demand it is. But yeah, they offered me the position. So
did you take it immediately? We're like, yes,
yes,
done.
Absolutely. And it's funny. They offered me the position, and you have to do your pre-employment drug screening and everything. And when they sent me the information for that, I was on a trip. I was non-revving. I was in Tokyo, and I was there for like 4 or 5 days. And I get back to the States, and I have like a voicemail on my phone. It's like, "Hey, this is Aaron with Hagland Aviation. We see from HR that you haven't completed your pre-employment drug screening. We really need you to get that done, or else we're going to have to rescind your offer of employment." I was like, "Oh."
You almost didn't get the job because you're out
because I was out
traveling.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously next day went straight and got that done, had that sent up to them. Yeah, so they invited me to a ground school class. It was, I believe, May 15th of 2017. And bought a ticket up there. And that was my first time in Alaska, was for ground school.
What was all right. So you're coming from nice, warm Arizona or California, wherever. You fly up to Alaska. You see the planes. You see what they operate, how they operate. What was your first? Were you like, what the heck did I just sign up for?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the ground school was in Anchorage, which relative to what I would end up, the places I would end up flying and living in Alaska, it seems pretty metropolitan. My first reaction, honestly, getting off the plane in Anchorage was how close the mountains were. Super cool. The Chugach Mountains are right there, right outside of town. Very, very stunning. But yeah, I guess it was a little bit of disbelief because it was like a ground school class. There were 15 or 20 of us, and we came in the first day, and there's binders with our names laid out and like manuals and stuff like this, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty legit. Yeah. This is like,
not expecting this.
Yeah. I don't really know what I was expecting, I guess, but it was pretty legit. And I was just excited to get started.
Absolutely.
So,
what was the flying like?
Oh man. So you do your, essentially what's in-doc. So just, company procedure, stuff like that. And then they actually rent out the caravan sim at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. So you do like 2 days of sim. So you practice emergency procedures and some basic maneuvers and stuff like that. Then they will send you out to a base to do your flight training, essentially to fly the actual plane. And they sent me out to Bethel, Alaska. I want to say 400 miles or so estimated west of Anchorage.
Okay. Was it like the bush of Alaska, like real bush pilot stuff, or?
Well, I think there's like kind of, I don't know if I would call it bush pilots. So we were flying, it was scheduled passenger and cargo operations. So we had a scheduled service and stuff like that. We only landed at airports, and by airports I mean like a gravel strip. Usually it was like 3,000 feet.
Alaska airports,
yeah, Alaska airports, but they were airports. They were in the database. So personally, I don't consider it bush flying.
But for me, someone that's never flown on a gravel or anything,
yeah,
it's like
in my opinion, bush flying is the guys in their Super Cubs with the 31-inch Alaska bush wheels, landing on sandbars and stuff like that. To me, that's bush flying. But yeah, Bethel, Alaska is a completely different world. If you were blindfolded, teleported, and dropped off in Bethel, Alaska, removed your blindfold, you would have no idea you were in the United States. No idea. There's one paved road through town. Most stuff is dirt, gravel. Unfortunately, Bethel there's a large portion of the population that struggles with poverty and alcoholism, which that's a conversation that could go on for another 3 hours on that whole deal. But yeah, it's a different world. There's very limited cell service. You're not going to get off the plane and check your Instagram. It's not gonna happen until you can find some Wi-Fi somewhere.
It's like a worst case scenario for a millennial pilot.
Oh my God, I was dying.
Yeah, you got to tell everyone. You got to show the pictures.
Exactly. There's a term called the Bethel 180, which is what happens when somebody gets a job out in Bethel. They get off the Alaska Airlines jet and they do a 180 and get straight back on the jet and go back to Anchorage.
Really?
Yeah.
Nope, not doing that.
Nope, not doing it. Not for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a completely different world. And
so you'd live in Bethel for 2 weeks and then you'd go back?
Yep. So the company had crew housing for us. Bethel was our largest base. I want to say there were about 20 pilots per shift. So they had 4 houses for us, and so they provided housing. There was a van and stuff that we could drive to and from the airport. It looks like a washboard, right? And so like the house we walked in, first thing I noticed was that the entire living room floor was slanted, like 2 or 3 degrees. Like if you put a marble on the floor, it would not stay in position.
So I'm guessing at this point, you're kind of like, what the heck did I sign myself up for?
And there were like large portions of the house that were just plywood and a little bit of insulation taped on there. It was pretty bare bones.
Did you ever think about quitting and going back home?
Yeah, actually. I don't know, I guess the attitude towards some of the new guys, and I don't know if it's the same right now, but I mean, you could tell right off the bat that, like I was someone who wanted to eventually like fly for the airlines, right? I mean, so a lot of the guys that work up there are, either locals to the area, or are people who don't really have a desire to fly for the airlines, stuff like that. Living out there is a completely different way of life.
Nothing wrong with it. People enjoy that
absolutely
kind of way
not.
of life. Yeah,
No.
It's just different.
It's just different. And I guess maybe the attitude towards a new guy and B, someone who's kind of looking to, like thought of myself as, I'm a cool airline pilot, some kid with 250 hours. Those guys have 10,000 hours, 9,000 of them in either a Twin Otter or a Caravan, flying to little villages in Alaska. It's
in great weather.
Yeah, in great weather. So
not great weather at all.
So, I mean, I don't know. I probably looked like a complete idiot walking in there for the first time. And so, that coupled with the complete culture shock of of spending my time in Bethel. I think there was a little part of me that wanted to quit and go home and, do something different. But at the end of the day, I was so excited to be flying.
You felt like a real pilot probably for the first time in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, someone's paying me to fly. They're paying passengers. We got assigned a flight and there are, 9 people waiting on us to fly home. It was kind of cool. It was it was a bit of a rough start. Any personal minimums that I may have had as a 250-hour pilot that had most of his experience flying in the excellent weather of Arizona and California got completely tossed out the window in Bethel.
You're like, wait, we're doing what?
Exactly. Yeah. Our op specs, I believe we could go VFR at, we required 600 foot ceiling and 2 miles in-flight visibility. And that was VFR. Yeah. So you could just launch on a 150-mile flight and fly the entire thing at 500 feet.
It's terrifying in Alaska.
Yeah.
Or anywhere.
I think until you've actually flown at 500 feet with a ragged overcast ceiling at 600 feet and 2 miles of in-flight visibility, it's a lot lower than you think. It is not good. And so I remember my first flight, my first revenue flight on the line. I was completely like dumbfounded by the fact that was legal and standard practice, essentially. A lot of stuff out there is non-radar. So if you're doing approaches, which you can get through Anchorage Center, it's 1 in, 1 out. So my first flight, we were going out to Hooper Bay, Alaska, which is on the far west coast of Alaska. And I believe we were IFR initially, but there was a medevac King Air ahead of us. And essentially what was going to happen was that we were going to end up holding for quite a while, waiting for the King Air to get in before we could get our approach clearance. So we just, went down, canceled IFR, and did the rest of the thing VFR at 500 feet, because then you don't have to hold and wait.
Yeah.
You can just,
your VFR.
you can go in.
Well, there's no radar.
So,
yeah.
Try not to incriminate myself on all the stuff we did.
I mean, 135 world, it's very similar to what I was doing. Like, they expect you to get the job done, and holding for that long is kind of unacceptable because they have a timeline they have to go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And although it might not seem like the safest thing in the world, I'm sure if you looked into what you're doing, like they were in your op specs, kind of how Alaska operates.
Yep.
It's kind of like you had to do what you had to do up there to get the job done. And 500 feet VFR, surrounded by mountains in Alaska with planes around, no radar. It's kind of like what you had to do.
Yeah. And frankly, the fact that we were even IFR to start out with was a result of the change of culture that had started before I had even started working for that company. For, I think, many, many years before I came there, IFR just wasn't even a thing. It was just, you'd be flying in IMC and you'd be flying VFR, just bootlegging it, getting the job done. There's no eyes on you. There's no one to, a lot of time you're single pilot up there. There's not anyone enforcing the rules of the road per se. And there's a lot of situations where IFR could actually get you in more trouble in terms of flying. So I don't know. The first example I can think of is, in the winter, let's say there's a ceiling over the entire area that's, 1,200 foot ceiling. Well, you could go IFR where the, minimum en route altitude is like 4,000 feet. They got to get you up to that altitude for radar contact. Well, now you're at 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet in the ice in a caravan with boots that don't do a whole lot.
Been there before.
Yeah, that don't do a whole lot towards keeping the ice off your plane.
First thing, caravan and icing, never fun.
Yeah, not fun. Or you could go VFR, stay out of the ice down at 1,000 feet, but now you're scud running, right? So it's kind of like a pick your poison.
Yeah, what are you more comfortable with?
Exactly, and it depends on the day. You talk to the other guys that are flying too. How bad's the ice? Is it manageable? Is it not? That'll obviously influence your decision.
How fast does the weather change up there?
Out in the YK Delta, I wouldn't say it changed super fast. That entire area is pretty flat, actually. There's not a whole lot of terrain out there. From what I've heard, yeah, down in like the southeast chain, Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, places like that, and like maybe down in like Kodiak or on the Aleutian chain, weather changes quite a bit faster with the terrain and all the mountains. It wasn't too bad. It was just the biggest issue that I had with the weather was that, yeah, you're going to fly in some bad weather, and it's not necessarily going to change fast, but it's like, I think I heard someone say, what's the difference between a private pilot and a commercial pilot? A private pilot wakes up and checks the weather to see if they can go fly that day. A commercial pilot wakes up, checks the weather to see what kind of weather they will be flying in that day. It's like, if it's legal, you're going to go. You're expected to be able to fly down to minimums, which is perfectly reasonable thing to assume, but it just sucks, when we were flying the 207, again, scud running, if it was 40 knot surface winds and you knew it's going to be, 60 knots at 1,000 feet and bumpy, it's like, all right, well, it's legal, it's 1,500.
Seatbelt up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
put my helmet on. Yeah.
All right, guys, strap in, get comfy, because it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, look back, this is going to suck.
Yeah, exactly. So,
would you do it again? Looking back on everything, seeing kind of like, looking back on your perspective of what that did for you and the knowledge you gained. Would you go
absolutely.
Back and do it again?
I think it was an invaluable experience for a couple of reasons. The big one is that it makes me appreciate my current job so much more.
Same. Not saying we came from the same background, but
flying for the regionals compared to flying in the bush is like being the most pampered princess ever. It's a joke, honestly. Flying for Raven, flying 135, not just for Raven, 135, it's a one-man job. And I think we talked a lot about that when I first started following each other on Instagram was, yeah, you are your own fueler. You're your own, ramper. You're your own flight planner. We de-iced our own planes. So yeah, so like the process for a flight would essentially be, we get assigned a flight from dispatch. We get our manifest. We say, okay, we have 2,000 pounds of this going to whatever village. All right, so I need this much fuel to do this flight per these either IFR or VFR flight rules. If we need an alternate, yada, yada, yada. Go out into the warehouse, find 2,000 pounds of whatever stuff we were taking, whether it's soda or chips or fresh 2-week-old fruit or, a outboard boat engine or an ATV or a snow machine, something, whatever it is. Go find it in the warehouse. Try and convince some rampers to help you load it. We were like always critically understaffed. We had rampers, but they were just so shorthanded. I don't blame them at all. They, so then you get it all together, you get it all weighed, make sure the weights on all the packages are accurate and stuff like that. Put it on pallets, get the pallet jack, drag it out to your plane in the snow, load it all up, install seats or remove seats depending on if you need more space or if you have passengers. In the Caravan, a lot of times we'd do cargo on the left side of the aisle and then passengers on the right side. So you'd have 800 pounds of Gatorade strapped down under the cargo net on the left side, and then you'd have 6 seats set up on the right side of the fuselage for passengers. Whatever, get it all set up. Get your fuel, get the fuel truck over there, fuel up the plane. And then if you need to de-ice, get into the de-ice bucket and find a ramper to drive we didn't have a traditional de-ice truck. We had a metal tower with a big tank of type 1 fluid, a burner can, and a water compressor hooked up. And then they would get a Caterpillar, like a loader with a forklift attachment, stick the forks through the tower, chain it up to secure it, and then they would lift it up off the ground and drive you around the plane. And you'd stand on top of the metal tower with your water compressor and hot type 1 fluid and spray down your plane.
There you go.
Not OSHA approved, I don't think.
That screams 135.
Yeah, and then you de-ice the plane, and then you hope that it doesn't snow, because we weren't approved for type 4 or any holdover times. So you hope that it doesn't snow or start freezing. Run inside, call your flight. Hey, this is flight, whatever, going to Hooper Bay. Passengers meet your pilot at the door. Grab your 6 passengers, get them out to the plane, help them with their seatbelts, because again,
Caravan seatbelts are difficult, man.
Yeah. Oh man. It's like having to, the number of times you have to explain how to put a seatbelt on is mind boggling. But yeah, and you get all that done, and then it's time to fly. And then you fly.
Flying's the easy part.
Flying's the easy part. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad you went into that, because when you're building your time and you go to these 135 or 91 operations, stuff like that, like there's so much more work than just flying that you don't really understand, and how much it sucks to load a plane, figure everything out. I mean, I've had to load a 3,000 pound skid all by myself in a plane. I had to drive the forklift, put it in, had to get a winch. The winch didn't work. Had to get the strap it 1 inch at a time to go up, retighten it. And it's just like, it was uphill. It was uphill both ways.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Those kind of stories are just, that's tough. It's hard. And then you gotta go fly in crappy weather and all scud run at 500 feet. So that stuff sucks.
Yes.
Building your time is pretty terrible sometimes.
Yeah. And then so you do that, and to put it into perspective, I would fly in the summer months when the weather was like decent enough. And I say decent, I'm not saying good. I'm saying decent enough to fly all day. We would fly 7.5 up to our limit of 8 hours a day, every single day for 15 days straight. It was nonstop, and you'd get home from work and you were just both physically and mentally beat. You just
10 hours of rest and go do it again.
Yeah, exactly. So 135, 14-hour duty day, 10 hours of rest. That's 24 hours right there. Just rinse, wash, and repeat for 15 days.
What's that chronic fatigue like for you up there?
Brutal. Usually I tell people days 1 through 9 or 10 weren't bad. I mean, the first couple of days weren't bad at all, because, you're back on shift. You see your coworkers, your friends. Yeah, you're excited. You see your friends that you live with. you're refreshed. Days 5 through 10, just work days. Days 11 through 15 or 16, depending on the month, could just be an absolute drag.
Just try to survive.
Oh, you're just trying to survive. Our van would leave the house at 7:30 in the morning. There'd be days I would wake up at 7:20. I mean, you're dirty. You don't even bother like taking a shower. You just put your clothes on and stumble out the door, get in the van, trying to like chug some coffee, get through the safety briefing in the morning, and you go pre-flight your plane. You're like, all righty, here we go. And you do that for, 10 or 12 hours at the airport. And then you go home, you make dinner, and then you take a shower and you pass out.
Did you have a big whiteboard where you were marking up all your hours and how close you were to getting out of there? Or maybe like a mental note, like, all right, I have 40 more hours left.
It wasn't so much as I wasn't really making a note until I could like get out of there. I definitely had some like competitions with my friends to see who could fly the most in a shift. I would always try and fly as much as I could in a shift. Partly a little bit to time build, but I really like the overtime. The paychecks are pretty nice if you could fly a lot. And then it was just, kind of something to keep the motivation going to get through a shift. It was, if you could turn your plane in 2 or 3 minutes, that's, another flight. You could get back to base first and get another flight. So, yeah, do that every single day for 15 days.
Rough. That's tough. I was on call for 10 days.
Yeah.
And it'd be rough.
Yeah.
Add another 5 days on that. Don't know if I could do it.
Yep. And so that all makes me appreciate my current job a lot more.
Why didn't you want to follow Raven up to their regional?
Yeah, so they do have the 121 certificate, which flies the Corvus, which flies the Dash 8. They only do day trips. So you start and end your day in Anchorage, which is awesome if you live in Anchorage. But I don't. So they actually do have, I think, really good schedules. At the regionals, we would call those a local trip, just a day trip. You start the day and end the day at your base. Almost makes it like a 9-to-5 job, which can be good, can be bad too. But I believe their starting pay is north of $60 an hour for FOs. And if you're only flying day trips, if you live in Anchorage, that is a sweet gig. So, but I wanted to fly for SkyWest. I had a lot of friends that were at SkyWest prior to me starting here. And yeah, I guess going back to, like growing up in California, we would always fly SkyWest from like Sacramento to San Francisco or LA, frequently on the Brasilia or the 200. So kind of nostalgic, I guess, to fly for SkyWest.
Yeah, that's awesome. What made you choose the regional you're at now?
Yeah, mostly that. And so I had a lot of people from Arizona State end up flying for SkyWest. There's, SkyWest is a Phoenix base, which is relatively senior, but people can get back there within a couple months now. And so I was fairly familiar with SkyWest. I talked to a lot of different people at different regionals. And in my personal opinion, I guess, it seemed like everyone that I knew that was at SkyWest or had flown for SkyWest previously enjoyed their experience for the most part. That played a big factor into it. SkyWest also has a bunch of California bases, which I think eventually at some point I'd like to...
What's wrong with Chicago, man? Come on.
No, don't get me wrong. I love Chicago. At some point, if I end up at SkyWest for a long time, I'd like to go back to California. One big thing that I guess two things that I were considering strongly with regionals were, where would I like to be if the market tanks and I end up at a regional for a career? That was one thing. And then B was bases and commutability and where do I want to live? So for me, again, SkyWest seems to be historically a pretty stable company. It has pretty decent growth. So I will say in my first 12 months at SkyWest, I believe on my first anniversary at SkyWest, there were 1,100 pilots below me already, which is insane. It does feel good. It makes me feel really good because that means there's already 20% of the pilot group below me in my first year. So knock on wood, obviously, if something were to happen and furloughs or layoffs, came around, they'd have to go through a lot of people before they get to me. And I'm not saying I'm, invincible or, anything can happen, but it makes me feel a little bit better about my job. And then the other thing was, bases and where do I want to live? When I was flying for Raven, I was commuting from Alaska. I was commuting from Arizona. So I would jump seat up 3 legs from Phoenix to Seattle, Seattle to Anchorage, and then Anchorage to Bethel. So it was a full day each way. And I was basically like, I do not want to commute to a regional. So, I have family here in Chicago. There's a little bit of family history here. So I'm familiar with Chicago. I love the city, wanted to live here. So, and then also the possibility of being able to go back to California if I want, made SkyWest a pretty attractive option for me. Yeah.
What's kind of your end goal? Do you have like an airline that you would love to work for? Or you just like, whoever can pick me up, let's go?
Yeah, I don't have a specific goal. I would honestly be happy flying for any company, even SkyWest. I think there are some people that can be kind of bitter about, being stuck at a regional or something like that. But one thing I tell people a lot is that if the regionals were like the top of the industry, let's say the best job in the aviation industry or the best job in the airlines, was the regional pay scale and the regional schedule. Well, most regionals, you'll probably top out at around $120,000 at the top end of the captain. Yeah, 120. Yeah, I think so. About $120 an hour. So anywhere between 110, 150 grand a year. Mm-hmm. And then, after, let's say you're here for a career and after, 15 years, you'll probably end up getting 15 days off a month. If you asked most people, if you just walk down the street in downtown Chicago, if they would take 120 grand and in 13 days off a month, it'd be like,
where do I sign up?
Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's a pretty sweet gig by itself.
Well, we're pilots. We complain about a lot of stuff.
Exactly. I mean, we have to complain about something.
You're never satisfied with where you are.
Yeah.
It's like even guys at Delta are like, well, that FedEx pilot's making more money than me.
Exactly. So. And that's, I think, where that bitterness comes from, is that there are jobs that are essentially the same, require a type rating and pay potentially 3 times as much, and you only work, 8 or 9 or 10 days a month.
Just wait till the new contracts come out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I just try and keep it in perspective. Yeah. I guess I'm not in a major rush. I'd love to fly for a legacy or a major airline. But
it's a good mentality to have, though. Because even where I'm at, I love the job I'm at now. People are here for a career. They make a career out of it. We have people flying the globals making over $300,000, but they're working a lot.
Yeah.
At the company I'm at now, the big knock is the more senior you get, you still have to work a lot to make a lot of money. You don't ever work less to make more money. There's options to work less, but you make way less money, significantly less. But at the airlines, you get more senior. 1 week or maybe a whole month and you're making like 400 grand. Now, granted, that's a very rare scenario. It probably doesn't happen all the time. There's a lot of catches to the airlines too.
Right.
But it's tough. And it's, when you ask people, it's always, I think one of the biggest things that can catch people is getting too comfortable with where you are.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So once you're at a regional, even where I'm at, where you're making good money, you're making like 100 grand, maybe a couple more, like 120, 150 even at a regional like you're talking about. It's like, well, I don't want to take a pay cut to go to American, but really you're going to be giving up so much money in the long run. And it's a tough place to be in. I mean, because like you said, you go to anywhere in Chicago, you ask someone, they're like, hey, you want to make 150 grand, work 13 days or work even 20 days a month. They'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Sign me up. So it's tough to take a pay cut and do that, but it's necessary in this company or this industry that we're
in. And that's another thing is, not getting too comfortable. I mean, my plan is hopefully take not necessarily the first available upgrade, but upgrade relatively quickly, and kind of put myself in a position to move on to potentially a better job in the near future. You do see a lot of people that maybe ride out that senior FO life as at the regionals, which I mean, I can't knock them necessarily. That's it's not bad being top 10% in any seniority list. But yeah, for me personally, I think it makes sense to.
I mean, yeah, like we said, whatever work, different jobs work for different people. Different people are in different situations.
Right.
So like if you want to max out your career earnings and you're willing to move wherever you want, then chase it.
Yep.
If you have a really good life in Chicago and you're working for SkyWest and being a senior FO or a senior captain there makes out best for your family life, then do it.
Yeah.
Like who cares? Who doesn't like, if you can survive off 150 grand and live in Chicago with 4 kids or whatever, and then go for it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really unique aspect of this job. It provides a pretty decent amount of flexibility. And if the airline schedule doesn't work out for you, I know a lot of people that love the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off kind of thing. So either 135s up in Alaska or like something like Atlas that allow you to have big chunks of time off every month to travel, or, if you live abroad but want to keep a job in the US, something like that. Yeah, it's pretty unique. I like it.
It's almost one of those things where there's too many options to where like no matter where you are, you're always second guessing yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, well, my life could be better here. I could do this. My one friend's doing this, but I'm doing this. It's like, what's better?
Yeah.
I found my dog's hair.
All good. Yeah. With the seniority system, it doesn't really benefit you to job hop. And I see a lot of my friends like in the tech industry who are able to, kind of move jobs if they see a project that they like more. There are a ton of different types of flying that I would love to do. But unfortunately, because of the seniority system, it doesn't really make sense for me to, go somewhere else. I'd love to try the flying that Atlas does. I jump seat on Atlas a ton. They're a great way to travel. I'd love to fly, a 7.6 or a 7.4 and fly from Hong Kong to Delhi and then back to Anchorage and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily want to end up at Atlas forever, I guess.
Right. So it doesn't like to try it.
Yeah. So it doesn't really make sense for me to like leave SkyWest and try it and then like come back to SkyWest, that really just give up a bunch of seniority. I'd love to try corporate. Mm-hmm. I don't really have any experience with corporate flying, but it doesn't make sense for me to leave SkyWest and try that. I'd love to go fly, air tankers or something like that.
Yeah. But once again.
Yeah. So, there's a ton of cool jobs in this industry.
That's one of the reasons
not just airlines.
Why I went the route I did, and because I knew I always wanted to fly PC-12. So I tried to find a place to fly PC-12, and I always wanted to fly for the company I'm at now. And I knew that if I went to the regionals or I went to the airlines, I'd never want to give up that seniority to go back and do it.
Yep.
So it's like, all right, maybe I might sacrifice a little bit of seniority at the beginning, but I'll never have that regret of like, what was it like? It's kind of like I've tasted it. And if I love it and fall in love with it and want to stay there, then I'll stay there. And if not, then I'll go move on and try something else if I'm able to, if I'm lucky enough. But like, it's been fun. So we'll see. Let's go ahead and do a quick little rapid fire section and then we can wrap it up. I'm just going to ask a bunch of random questions.
Oh boy.
I wish I had them written down. I used to have them written down. So it might be like 2 questions or it might be 20. We'll see. But say the first thing that comes to your mind and as fast as possible.
Oh boy.
You ready? Yeah. All right. What's your favorite airplane you've ever flown?
Alaska Mayday.
What's your least favorite airplane you've ever flown, if you have one?
Oh, I don't want to say a CRJ 200, but it is a little painful to fly 200 after flying the 700, 900.
Right, fair enough. What is your favorite airport you've ever flown to? As you being the pilot, not like a passenger.
Yeah. Can I say not an airport?
Yeah.
Knik River Strip.
Okay.
North of Anchorage.
No big deal. That's cool. What's your favorite airport you've flown to as a passenger? So like in all your travels.
Are we talking like as in like the destination or like the airport itself?
The airport itself.
Let's go with St. Thomas.
Okay.
That's cool.
What's your favorite approach you've ever flown?
I just recently finished DMA training at SkyWest, so for Aspen and Eagle.
Oh, cool.
And I'm going to say the single engine, not single engine. I'll say the localizer DME 1.5 into Aspen.
Okay. We fly in Aspen all the time. So
okay. Yeah.
It can be interesting.
Yeah. It's fun.
Pointing that nose straight to the ground.
Yeah.
Get down. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your least favorite approach you've ever flown?
Probably the back of the hand napkin approaches that I would have to fly in bad weather in Alaska.
Okay. Over the Stansom Stack?
Yeah, well, just like places that didn't have official approaches, but like if the weather's garbage and...
The land.
Yeah, you have to land. So, sorry, I'm like going off on a tangent, but like you would fly this is incriminating. OBS approaches.
Yeah.
Have you heard of?
Yeah. I mean, we used to have to you go direct to the airport, you hit OBS, and you line it up, make a fake center line.
Yeah, just hit 1,000 feet at 3 miles and a 500 a mile and a half, and do that. Yeah, and doing that because you can't see anything is not fun.
Right. Yeah. No, not at all. Let's see. What is your favorite airline to fly on? You've done a lot of traveling, whether it's jump seating or just non-rev.
Really enjoy Cathay Pacific.
Are they pretty? Do they like having non-revs? Are they pretty welcoming?
Yeah, I've just done Zed fares on Cathay, so I don't think they know I'm a non-rev. But the in-flight service on most Asian carriers beats American carriers. Blows them out of the water.
Air China. I've flown on Dragon Air.
Okay, maybe not those. But
so I'm going to have to disagree with you from my experiences.
My example is the other week I flew from Taipei to Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. It's an hour and 15 minutes. In an hour and 15 minutes on a heavy, we were on an A350.
Nice.
They do a hot meal service with hot towels, 2 drink services. In the US, if you're on an hour and 15 minute flight, you will struggle to see the flight attendants even get out of their jump seats.
My experience is Shanghai to Beijing, hour and 45-minute flight on Air China. We flew for 2.5 hours and we landed back in Shanghai.
Okay, yeah, that's not great.
With no explanation at all. They're like, "Oh, this is your captain. We're going back to Shanghai." And everyone on the plane was freaking out and we couldn't understand anything. So we're everyone's looking at my family's looking at me what's going on? I was I don't know. They're landing back in Shanghai. It's are we in trouble? I was probably, but I don't know.
Did they get you back to Beijing at some point?
It was eventually? A mess. We had to, because traveling in China is awful.
Yes, it's an adventure.
Maybe international travel in China is okay, but domestically throughout China, it's terrible.
Really?
You have to it turns into a whole day affair. Naturally. So if you're flying from Beijing, you got to block out 24 hours to get there. Because it's constantly delayed because the government restricts, I'm sure they restrict how many routes that they can fly on. And if there's bad weather through those routes, you either fly through it or you go back to your destination. So yeah. All right. Back to the rapid fire. What's your favorite airline livery? You've seen a lot, so.
I have seen lots.
Don't say a bad one.
Yeah, man.
If you don't say anything, then I'm just going to say you said Spirit.
Big yellow banana. The first thing that comes to mind is it's so lame because it's just what I fly. I actually really like the new American livery.
It's a good one.
But
they did a good job.
There's so many better ones out there. They just not coming to me right now.
Do you have a least favorite one? One that's just
Japan Airlines or China Eastern. Yeah, China Eastern's pretty bad.
Yeah.
See that one? I'm just why?
Seen those.
Yeah.
I don't want to get on that plane. They got to worry about people throwing coins in the engine before they take off. So, all right, man. That's pretty much all the ones I have for you. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Very short notice. So I appreciate it. The perks of living in Chicago. Yes. But it's nice to finally meet you. We've been talking for a while, so it's good to meet you and tell your story. Last thing I'll ask is, I usually ask this to everyone. Someone comes up to you, say you're at Oshkosh or an air show, they hear this, they want to ask you questions about what they should do. What would you recommend, kind of 3 tips? Doesn't have to be 3, just a couple of tips that you'd give someone that's new into this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess don't lose sight of the end goal, especially if you're starting out in flight training. It can be a process. That's not always fun. I think it's also hard to not compare yourself to other people.
Gosh, especially with Instagram.
Yeah, it's bad. And I mean, we're all guilty of doing that. But I think if people realize that the average pilot is a lot more average than they think they are, we'd all be a lot happier with ourselves. In terms of once you're actually flying for a job, live in base. Commuting is not fun. And I understand it's not always an option to live in base or to move. But it has been a huge quality of life increase for me living in base versus commuting to work. Yeah, I think those would be the first 3 things I can think of.
All right, man. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on and look forward to talking to you more.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you, man.
Thanks.
Aviation, that is a wrap of episode number 85 of the Pilot the Pilot podcast. I'm currently doing this one in my car as my mother-in-law and my dad are both at my house. There's no room to record. I sound like an idiot talking and no microphone when they're staring at me. So got to do what you got to do. If there's a little bit of background noise, that is why. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As I said earlier, looking for 400 reviews on iTunes. Please, I need your help. Share it with friends. If you haven't reviewed, please take the time out of your day to review it and let other people know how great of a podcast this is and how much you like it. Check out our website, pilotthepilothq.com, and our Patreon page, patreon.com/pilotthepilot. Aviation, if you ever want to contact me as well, pilotthepilothq@gmail.com. That's all I have for you today. I can't wait till next week's episode. And without any further ado, and as always, happy flying.